Good afternoon and welcome to the Straight Talking podcast. They say never meet your heroes. This hero is my dad. This afternoon's guest is Sean Lally, absolute megastar and icon of Irish cycling. How are you?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks very much. Thanks.
No worries. So I'm going to ask him about his early life, his sport, training, his cycling, where it brought him. I suppose we'll start off. Where were you born in Dublin? What was your early childhood like?
Well, a lot of older people will understand this. I'd be a product of tenement Dublin. My mother and father lived in tenement Dublin, and they got a corporation house in Cabra West, and that's where I was born, bred and buttered in, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty deprived area at the time, but that's the way it was.
Yeah. And what was your earliest memories in Cabra West? You grew up on Killala Road. What was your early childhood memories of that scheme and growing up in that area?
A fantastic area, because we had a public swimming baths up in Cabra called the Cabra Baths, and none of us had money, but it was no charge going in, and the corporation ran it, and we all swam up there every day. Yeah. The summers seemed to last forever.
Yeah. And you, in your early career, you'd done a bit of Irish dancing and a bit of boxing, and then you start cycling. How did you get into the cycling? How did you start cycling?
Well, in those days we all started to work as children. I started to work at 14 years of age, and my schoolmate Alfie, he was the same. And we joined the Onoiga Youth Tossing Association, and we used to go out for weekends, and we were influenced by the films. You went hitchhiking and you took your thumb out and you got a lift in the car.
Right.
But we went to Wicklow everywhere. We never got a lift anywhere.
Yeah.
And I wasn't too keen on all the walking we were doing. And I suggested to Alfie, I said, if we could get bikes, no matter what the hill we walked, we wouldn't have to walk down the other side. Yeah. So that's how the two of us started cycling.
And what year was that?
Well, only 14. So it would have been 1955.
1955. And then how did you start the competitive cycling? How bicycle racing, where did that come from? Because unlike most kids today that they do sports that their parents are into, or that's how they get dragged, you had nobody to influence you that way. So how did competitive bicycle racing, where did that come from?
Well, I used to go off in the hostels, and the CDs we'd go into counter races, because we only had single gear bikes. And we had to walk up the hills because there's no gears in our bikes. And usually the fellas talk about fellas doing 1-3s. That's referencing the time trialing and the breakaway, the bunches, and we hadn't a clue what they were talking about. And we were doing this for a couple of years. We did ferocious spins. We went to like Kilkenny, North of Ireland, Rostrevor, Wexford. We had ferocious spins, and we stayed overnight and came back. But the cycling influence was one day Alfie and myself were going back from Glendalough. And we come into Bray, and Bray was all cordoned off with people all around it. It was closed down. And there's a bicycle race going on. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And I remember seeing them going around, and a chap that won the race, I'll never forget his name, Christy Kimmage is his name. He's in Cabra, funny enough. And he won the race, and I just goggle-eyed. I didn't know how I could even get in, but go about it. That lit the fire for me, you know.
And Christy Kimmage was Paul Kimmage's that, right?
Correct.
All the Kimmages, okay. And then what club? So you kind of did that sow the seed? Jays would like to have a go at that, or how did it continue on from there?
Yeah, I met there's a lad in Cabra I knew, and I knew he did a bit of cycling, and he introduced me to fellas going out for spins, and I learned an awful lot from them. And then they started talking about racing and all that. I said, God, I'd love to have a lash at that. And that's how I drifted into it.
Right. And what was your first club that you joined?
Dublin Whalers.
Right. Dublin Whalers. And then your early career up to your... So you started at what age did you start at?
I was then and today it would have been old. I was 17.
17 starting. So your early career, what did you think of bike races, and when did the Ross Taltons come along? When did you start them bigger races? And what way did it work there? Was it just everyone in together, or was there categories?
No categories. But don't forget, in those days you had breakaways. You had a split. There was a national association and an international association, and they couldn't mix because the national association weren't recognised by the World Council. So I wasn't with them. I was with the international crowd. You understand?
Yes.
And sorry, I forget what you said to me there, John.
About what was the difference between, like, when you were cycling competitively then? What was the difference between category wise? Like you said, there was two bodies there, but there was no categories between cyclists at the time.
No, you were a junior under 18, and then you were a senior. You remember all the best immediately.
Okay. And when the Ross Taltons and stuff, when did you start eyeing up them bigger races, and what is the first half decent result or victory that came along for you? What year and what age were you?
Well, I was only racing 2 weeks, and a famous race called the Dublin Drogheda, and all the young lads, like I'd been the junior then, we were all put off early, about 6 minutes ahead. It was a 60-mile race. I'll never forget, there was 14 of us put off together, and myself and another chap left them all behind, and coming up. I finished at Santry Stadium and coming up our swords. I was dead in the bike, and he rode off and left me, and I came across the line second.
Yeah.
And it was the first time actually the guys went off first, went caught.
Right.
And I got great kudos off all the established guys. They taught the two of us did very well.
Yeah. Right. And then I suppose for the people listening to this, like, and probably have their dads do whatever, and they're just like, yeah, me dad does whatever. I kind of only remember you being cool in our house when I think I went to a race with you somewhere, and Stephen Roach was there, and I'm not sure if Sean Kelly was there, and they kind of knew you.
Yeah,
you know, they kind of knew you, and I was like, Jesus, he knows that. And the first, I suppose, when you start then riding the serious races and you were coming up representing Ireland and getting selected on teams to go abroad and represent Ireland, how did that feel, like going to Sea Links and riding the British Milk Race and going to the World Championships and getting selected? What kind of training? You always worked full time.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
A good few sports people look at this. So you worked for the ESB,
yeah,
and you knocked out 40-hour weeks. So I remember, and sometimes you got called in
breakdowns
on Saturdays and storms and stuff. But you were competing against blokes that were technically professional and weren't working and stuff like that. So when you were competing seriously like that, a week's training. So starting from when you went into work and done your 8 hours, what would you do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, training wise?
Well, I remember I was working at Ballymun there, and what I would do, I'd knock off work at 5 o'clock and I'd cycle out through Ballyboggle, through Knoll, into Drogheda, and come back to the main road.
Okay.
And we get back home at 8 o'clock, 8:30.
Okay.
That's what you do.
After work.
Yeah.
And then, so you do that most days. Then, would there be any races during the week, or club races, or that you do kind of high tempo stuff or speed stuff during the week? Or did you know anything about that at the time?
No, I have a well. What would happen then was the night races would start. It would be, well, I get this right now. It'd be, say, the first Tuesday in May, and it would then say the last Tuesday in May. But you'd have club races maybe on a Wednesday or the Thursday as well.
Okay.
You know, no, but what I found was, you were asking me how. I when I was racing, for example, I maybe I had a good fortune to be with 6 and 7 good fellas. I'd always finish 5th or 6th. I'd have 10 fellas to be 8th or 9th. And I used to say, I'm as good as any of them, what's wrong? And then I had a good fortune that a coach came over from the UK, a former world champ, Norman Shade, a terrific pursuer on the track, a world champ. And he introduced me to what's called interval training. And that was the thing, because before that, all we ever got was go out and do the miles, go out and do the miles. We did crazy miles. We did 140 mile spins, and now not kilometres, crazy kind of, and we neglected, never taught a rest. But this man, Norman Shield, he opened up altogether that anybody can do 200 miles or 300 miles, but can you go fast for 2 minutes? Mm-hmm. And that opened it up for me.
And this interval tempo stuff seems to be across all sports now at the moment. You see it in MMA, they call it zonal training and interval training or fartlek training. And then with the advent of polar sports watches, it really became popular. But you hadn't got them back then.
No.
So how would you do that type of interval training? What would you do? Because that was early 80s, was it? What year was that?
Oh no, that would be 70s.
Okay, late 70s?
Early 70s.
Early 70s.
Yeah,
so how would you replicate that interval training? What would you do?
Well, I didn't.
And where would you do it?
I didn't quite go with what he said. I pushed it a bit further, because I reckon, right, my thoughts on it were, right, if I'm out training and there's a lamppost up there and I'm heading for the lamppost, I'm only sprinting to get to the lamppost.
Yes.
So I decided to pull the brakes, nearly stop on the road, and kick as hard as I could until it explode.
Yeah.
Until I nearly black out.
Okay.
Because I figured then if you could do that, you'd never have to do that in a race.
Yes.
And that's what I believe in, explodes out. But then I had a good fortune, because I only found out years later, I fast twitch muscles. My 2 brothers had them, Johnny had them, Max had them, your brother Sean, he has them, and his young lad. And I think we have, and I had a good fortune to have a chat with Eamon Cochran a long time ago, and he was the same. And said, all the males in my family were blessed with that.
Right. And I suppose from a sporting point of view, a lot of people that won't be into sports will watch this, or this will be around for a while. But at the time, and up until a good few years ago, to your late 40s, me dad here was competing at elite level against professionals and the best guys in the country. So it's not like some bloke, we're dragging in some bloke that done a bit of cycling. You were high level. Your brother went to the Olympics. You represented Ireland many times. But your younger brother, Tony, he went to the Olympics in 1980.
In Moscow.
You and him used to train together in the Phoenix Park. He's used to use the Phoenix Park.
Had a little triangle.
So what nights would you meet up there, and how did his training make you better, and vice versa, which is knocking spots off each other?
Well, he hadn't got time to train, because he trained to be an actuary.
Okay.
And I was working up in Semper in Ballyfermot, the word of that big factory up there then, and he was living at home in Cabra West. I was married, so we used to meet him in the park.
In the Phoenix Park.
In the Phoenix Park, a little triangle, and we sprinted for one corner, and I'd leave him behind, and I'd eventually lap him.
And was it a mile circuit, 2 mile circuit?
About a K.
Okay.
No, a whole thing was about a K. So he went from one corner to the other corner, a little restaurant, and then. Now, from the time you start to the time you finish, it wouldn't even be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But you'd be destroyed.
Yeah.
But that's all he could do. Because he hadn't got time. He was studying and all that.
Yeah.
So, if he was in even when he took up races as a kid, it was a bunch finishing all together. You could put you had a hit rate of about 90-95% of winning that race in a bunch finish.
Yeah. And yous were known as sprinters.
Correct.
So for people that don't know this, when the bunch stays together or a breakaway gets up the road of 10 guys after 90, 100 miles, yous were fast. Yous were confident that you were going to beat everyone to the line.
Yeah.
Because yous were fast. And you trained for that.
Oh, yes.
Like, everyone else had to win on their own, whereas yous guys were like, stay together because who's going to be second? That was your mentality.
That was right, yeah.
Who's going to be
Force loser.
Yeah, who's
second.
yeah, who's going to be second today? Now, Tony, as you said, was studying to be an actuary, and he went to the Olympics in 1980, and then he went on to work in Bank of Australia and Deutsche Bank, and had a very successful career work-wise.
Yeah.
Do you think that was put down to the work and his work ethic of training?
Oh,
from an early age.
Definitely, because a lot of people wouldn't know this, but he won the Tour of Ireland. He was only 20.
Yes.
And a lad you a lot know about was on the team with him, Sean Kelly.
Yeah.
The only folk did fantastic, they did, you know.
Yeah. And getting back to, there was a book that came out a few years ago, and the guy that exposed Lance Armstrong wrote it, David Walsh.
Oh, gee.
I was going to ask you this question, and you were only down with Sean Kelly a few weeks ago.
That's right, yeah.
Down in, was it Carrick?
Carrick, yeah.
Down in Carrick, you went out for a spin with him a couple of weeks ago. But I'm going to ask you about, in that book, you got mentioned. So start off in the day, so you were in the break with him in, was it the National Championships?
No, it was the Liam Touring race. It was a 104 mile race around Ballybottle, and we finished at the back of the airport.
And what year was that? 75?
70 sometime. I can't put a year. I'm not great for you. But
what age were you at the time?
Oh, jeez, I was born in Ireland at that time. It was 34 or 5.
35. Okay, which all these guys would have been 21, 22.
Ah, yeah.
They were all young then.
Yeah.
So you were 35. And so you're in the break. Who was in the break? How many people were there? So break, for people that don't understand, is guys that go off the front of the bunch.
Yeah.
So the break is these guys who are potentially going to win because they're faster. The bunch is behind. So if you're in the break, you have a chance of winning the race. You're kind of stronger. And cycling, like running, is pretty easy. The strong guys go up the road and the weaker guys stay behind. There's no tactics or anything. It's just the strong guys go up the road and the weaker guys are left behind. So who was in the break that day?
Before I got replied to that, I was down with Sean a few weeks ago. We had a great weekend together, and I never told anybody about that. How good did the book? I don't know. And I asked Sean, and he said, and he told nobody either. I don't know how good did the book.
Okay.
But what happened was, I was coming up, and we're coming up to at the Knox down there, you know, about 2 miles to finish, and it was one of the about 4.5 hours, a ferocious hot day. And 4 fellas pulled away and 4 was left behind. Sean was one of the 4 and I was one of the 4.
That were left behind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
who's the 4 guys that went up the road?
Noel Taggart, I think it was Peter Doyle. I can't remember the other 2. I can't remember.
And who was left with yours?
I was with Kieran McQuaid and myself, and I can't remember who the 4th guy was. But
Sean Kelly.
Sorry, Sean. Sean was there, yeah. So what happened was we were dead in our leg. Everyone was more dead than the other. Yeah. So Sean made a big effort to get across and leave us to catch the front 4. And I jumped onto his back wheel.
Yeah.
And he pulled over. That means he pulled over. He wanted me to go to the front, and sure, I was dead on the bike. I said, Sean, I can't. And he just turned around and gave me a dig.
Yeah.
And there was blood all over my face, you know. And there was all kind of stuff at the finish. And it appears I didn't know. They wanted me to protest about him, you know. And
who wanted you to protest?
The officials.
Okay.
They even got a bit of paper and pencil out and all that. And I wouldn't, you know. So I went across and I said to Sean, you're only a young lad. Never, ever do that again. Please, never do that again. Now, Sean, a man of very few words, he said nothing, you know, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of a young lad, right, could have been suspended for 3 weeks or 3 months or anything. So that was all. That was all. It was that simple. It was a spur of the minute thing, and Sean has had an incredible career and was never in any trouble at any race and any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't do it. Now, a mature reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good that you went down for a few weeks ago. Well, and just had a bit.
I'm going down again. Actually, he's organised a day for us all to go down again.
Ah, brilliant! Brilliant. And then, I suppose, going on, you and Tony, Jimmy wouldn't have been in your league, competitive wise. Jimmy was the third brother, but was you and Tony were kind of the rootless ones.
But we got fourth, second, third one night in a race, the three of us.
Right, where was that?
In the Phoenix Park.
Fourth, second and third.
2 weeks previous, we were fourth, second and fourth. And I said, lads, we're not making a cock up now. We better get right the next time. Yeah. So we did. It was great.
Ah, nice.
It was just fantastic.
Nice.
Funny, my father died tragically in Australia on holidays. And he just collapsed and died. And in the hospital, he went through his belongings. And he had to cut out of that night, Lally family dominate.
Ah.
He obviously cut out the paper, and that was in his wallet. But,
lovely.
You know,
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's how I got a lump in my throat in the head, you know.
Yeah. He died of deep vein thrombosis.
That's
wasn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
After getting off the plane in Australia.
Yeah.
And getting back to, I suppose, competitive wise, what couple of years for you and Tony would Tony have been better for longer? What I mean is, who had more wins per year? Were you kind of firing at the same time, or did you win a bit more before him, or how did it work out?
Well, it's very funny because we had to once we would help each other, but we're together we try and beat each other.
Yeah.
But there was one particular night in the Phoenix Park. There was a big bunch sprint, and he was on one side of the road, I was on the other. There was 150 guys in the race.
Yeah.
And was flat out in the sprint. And I seen him putting his hand up the other side of the road.
Yeah.
See? And I was ahead of him. I put my hand up on this side.
Yeah.
So it was very funny that Jim McArdle, he wrote for the Irish Times. He said, despite Tony Lally putting his hand up in the Phoenix Park to win last night, on the other side of the road, his brother had his hand up, but he was ahead.
Oh, nice.
So, now, with regard to win, you see, I really hate. I never kept a record.
Yeah.
But there actually, the last elite race I rode, you rode it. There was a Bocherman, you and Simon Whelan.
Oh, Robertstown, yeah.
In Robertstown County Mead, my son here, John, was on it, and Simon Whelan, who's now living in Australia.
Yeah.
I was first, Simon was third, and John was fourth.
Yeah.
And how I remember the man gave me this trophy, says, and how old are you now, Sean?
Yeah.
I was 56.
Yeah.
That was my last win against the elites.
Yeah.
At the time, it didn't seem important, but when I look back now, I said, "Jeez, that was all right."
Yeah, no, you're going well that day. Going well that day. I actually remember. I remember because, and I suppose this is for athletes listening in, you're never going to be the strongest all the time. But one thing I learned off me dad and my son Max, they speak together. No matter what sport you're in, you can say, they're different. Tactically, they're all the same.
Really great.
And that day, Simon was one of the fastest in the country at the time.
He was the fastest the whole bunch that day.
Nobody in a straight 200 metres, there was nobody beating him. He was really, really fast.
Yeah.
But that day, you knew that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So what we did was that day, we couple of us, we were attacking one by one to try and get out, and a really fast guy called Andre Engelman.
Andre, big strong lad.
He sat on in the bunch all day, wouldn't do one piece, and 3 miles from the end he took off, and you were welded onto the back of him, and
I wouldn't go round him.
how you win bike races and how you win. People, it's not always the strongest people. So he was stronger than you.
Oh, at that stage, yeah.
Stronger. At that stage. Back in the day now, he wouldn't have been, but you were 56.
Yeah.
And I always remember, and Sean Kelly won the Tour of Lombardy. Milan San Remo. Milan San Remo this way. Or any really good guys. So Andre Engelman turned around to you and said, "Are you going to do a bit?" And what did you say to him?
No. But he said, "We'll be caught." I said, "I don't mind. Simon will win, though."
So he kept riding. And 56, fair play to you.
I didn't see that. I was winning races all the time at that time. So I don't even know. I look back. It's different when you look back, you know.
And me looking back now at them times, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but now I appreciate it that I can't do it anymore. Is what people would be racing against our outfit. Now you were a lot older then, but tactically you were still very aware and you were smart, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose for athletes listening to this as well, some of the best advice, and you give it to Max also, is like you were explaining the difference between a really, really strong guy who won multiple Rosses called Philip Cassidy.
Great guy, yeah.
And yourself. And this breaks it down in all sports. It's like, Phil, you have a 1200cc engine. I have a 750cc engine.
That's right.
They have to go to the same place. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be the strongest all the time, but doesn't mean you can't win.
Yeah.
If you're smart enough and shrewd enough.
Yeah.
You know, but I suppose you're still competitive now, and you still train away now.
Yeah.
And I was bringing the boys out there. Was it 2 Saturdays ago?
That's right, yeah.
And we were going out training, and who do I pass from the back roads of Portmarnock? So I'm in the van bringing me 2 sons training, and everyone's in lockdown, and I'm going training. Who do I see passing boys on his bike out doing a few miles? Yup, the lad. But I suppose, looking back at your racing, and what is your biggest win, or the win that made you most happy?
There's some terrific ones. Like I've had a good fortune to race with Stephen right through, and Sean Kelly, you know. And I remember Stephen in his first year, 1980, was at Dublin on the continent. He won the amateur Parry Rowback.
Okay.
That year, you know.
Yeah.
And the year before that, I was running a race down in Tullamore, you know. This is giving an idea. It was a 3-day race. And we're coming to the finish. I tore the fourth day, I won the second day, so I was the race leader. So it was a big group of us, and towards the end of the race, 3 of us got away. It was Stephen, Mickey Nulty, a great lad from County Meath, and myself. Now I was a race leader, and I said to the 2 of them immediately, "If you ride, I won't sprint." So to make a long story anyway, boring. Unfortunately, Mick posted a mile to go, and I'm coming down the finishing straight in Tullamore, the Harriers in Tullamore, and said, "Stephen, put your hand up. Can I have it?" I said, "Yeah, I told you I wouldn't sprint, you know." So make it all, like John talking about tactics and all that. So everyone said, "Why'd you let him have it?" Blah blah blah. Those 2 lads could refuse to work with me, and there was that whole bunch behind me.
You were the race leader.
And then I had a great run in with Sean Kelly down in his hometown, Carriganshire. It was a 2-day race, and all the usual suspects were down there, you call them. And it depended on, if I finished ahead of Sean the second day, I won the race, or him ahead of me. So to make a long story boring, as you say, I beat Sean, you see. And his manager then, later on his father-in-law, Don Grant, said to me, "Oh, Lally, you're an awful whore," he says. "You'd imagine let Shawnee have it." I said, "Well, he let me win a race in Dublin."
Yeah.
But I can't pick on his particular race, because they all have a certain buzz about them, you understand? And then, like, I've had races I should have won that I didn't. Like, I should have won the stage in the Tour of Scotland. A guy beat me, a Polish guy beat me. It had nothing to do with him. An Australian pulled out my jersey, and the Polish chap won the race. It had nothing to do with the Billy. I should have won that, you know what I mean? And then I had another great one into Stoke-on-Trent and one of the milk races. A man called Pete Van Cadwick on the stage, and 2 years later he won the stage in Tour de France and took the yellow jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
And that Polish chap, 6 weeks after that, he won the gold medal in the World Championships in Barcelona.
Right.
So you think of guys like us who are doing full-time jobs, competing against them, and like, as I said, we were racing on bread and jam.
Yeah.
You know what kind of stuff a lot of them guys are on. So
Yeah.
we did all right, but I can't pick out anything outstanding because there's so many things. I mean, I've ridden all over the bloody place. See, you understand what gave enthusiasm. Your generation, how to ride on 14-day races and be dreading them and all. And I said, no, I said, right, you might have to ride the bike for 5 hours every day. Mechanic cleans your bike. The masseur looks after you. That's all you have to do. You have 19 hours off. And he'd look at you. Because they're home or cycling to work in the cold, walking out in the cold all day, and going training away in the cold. So to me, it was like a holiday.
Yeah.
And I used to get. I was told it was too serious by a lot of people, but I got me rocks off in the race.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be up half the night or fellas out all over the place. That's what I got, and like, right, I'm an outfit now. But I thought yesterday I did 120k yesterday.
Yeah.
I did an hour this morning, the indoor trainer. I like feeling good.
And what age you?
I was 79 there a few weeks ago. Don't rub it in.
120k is 79. You up the lad. But
it's what I do.
I remember, you don't know this.
My father's rank 6 points all the time. That's what he did.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, I was out, a famous cycling family from out in Drogheda, Mickey Nulty. About 10 years ago, I was out with Mickey, and he was saying, do you know what? The lad was some man for the training. He said to me, he told me this story, I never said this to you. He said, there was one Friday, he says, I was driving back from work and I was fighting with myself all the way home whether I was going to go training or not. And it was November and it was just bleeding snowing. And he says, I made up my mind then, I'm not going training. And he says, I was coming over by the cement works there at Platten. And he says, who do I fucking see out training in the fucking snow hitting the ground? The bleeding lad. So he said, I was made sure. He said, when I seen him, I was like, he's from Raheny, we're in Drogheda, we're going bleeding training tonight. So Mickey was high level as well. Mickey won a lot. And
Mick's a great guy.
Very strong guy.
Great guy.
Today, like, today's athletes and I suppose how you trained and training in general, do you think much has changed, or do you think it's just got a bit more scientific than what you used to do?
Listen, I race far too much. Like, and we tried to win every race, which was madness. But that's why you could never do enough training. That was what we got. And we got there despite the odds. No, with all the coaches and all the stuff they have now, you know. But despite what coach you have, or if you haven't got the fire in your belly, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to have that fire. You can't buy that. You know. No, I think it's great now. It's great now because there's so much knowledge out there if you want to grab a hold of it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you get fellas that go to coaches and they're doing their own thing as well. So the coaches are not getting the best out of them, but not got the best out of the coach. But a good coach will know that he's not doing what I'm telling him.
And I suppose one aspect of your training with me, like, and Brian and Sean and I suppose Tony will be able to say that they've done this, is the hill intervals you used to get us to do on a Wednesday. And I remember when I was starting off in my early career, and my career in comparison to yours wasn't long or wasn't a whole lot, but I suppose it's carried over to Max now. Like, and I mean Max, that he still does, and I encourage him to do the stuff that you got me to do. And it's like, oh, how can that carry over to MMA or jiu-jitsu? It does. Because if you do hill intervals, you can't hide. There's no hiding.
No.
Do you know what I mean? You can pretend you're putting in so many hours. So I remember on a Wednesday in work at about 3 or 4 o'clock, I'd start to feel sick in my stomach because I knew what I had to do on the way home from work. I used to cycle to work as well on Hout. And now with the hill intervals, hill repeats, whatever you want to call them, it's like when you run a hill repeatedly with its set break every time, you're only competing against yourself.
That's right.
And if you say, geez, I've done 10 there, they were handy, you always walk away going, crushed, going, geez, I'm not as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
And you used to do them, the hill intervals and Hout.
Yeah.
And when we were all training, you back in the day, or even me, nobody could live with us on Hout. Hill intervals or sprints, or because that's where you trained all the time. That's where I trained all the time. We could go fast. We had acceleration. And I suppose in all sport, acceleration is everything. You know, they call it, you can call it cardio, or you can call it whatever you want. Yeah. Acceleration, speed and power is everything.
Well, if you one other fella come to the line, you have to be faster than him.
Yeah.
No, what you just said there, John, is very true. Certain fellas told him that, you know. And I said, I'm going to tell you this, but if you're in work and looking forward to it, you're not doing it right.
yeah.
But you know, and after X amount, if you're going slow, go home, because you're only trained there to go slow.
Yeah.
No. But an awful lot of common sense, an awful lot of it is, but common sense is not very common. There's nothing magic about it. You still have to work, you have to put in the hours, and you have to be disciplined. But there's a new era I didn't know about. There's a well-known coach, and I was talking about it a few months ago, and I was asking about, you know, you go in and what's your output for power, blah, 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 and all this, you know. And you see, there's a new guy on the thing now. What he does, he trains like a lunatic to get all these numbers up. And that's it. He gets good numbers, he shows it to everybody. and just arses around them. And he mentioned names, but I'm not going to mention them. But I never thought of that. I don't know how it felt to be that silly. No, it's probably the same in all sports.
And I suppose you never drank or smoked when you were cycling or competing, and your career, you're still competing, even though with this COVID start. So technically, how many years have you competed for?
Well, I was off for 2 years with I got a major surgery on my back, you know. And then I had a year there of very bad depression, you know. So, well, I'll be racing over 50 years.
50 years.
Yeah. And I've had the good fortune, they're going to laugh at this, John. Every year I competed, I never failed to win. And the year I raced. Now, it might happen this year when these are going.
So, that's kind of us wrapped up today anyway. It was, the great thing about this for me is that we have this forever now. So, I suppose I'm delighted that we have this and we've done this, and if anything, I hope it can encourage young athletes or people to take their craft or what they do seriously, you know, and to learn a little from like being competitive, and if you're in sport, to treat it serious. Enjoy it as well. Enjoy
very
it.
Important.
It's important.
It's supposed to be fun.
Anyway, the Straight Talking podcast, thanks for joining. Subscribe, like, share the video. Would love some comments and feedback on what you think. And it was great having me dad on. He's not on any social media, but it was great having him on the podcast. Yup, Dalal.